Hello and welcome to Miss Hannah Loves Grammar. In this video I'll be sharing a full marks model answer for argument writing as considered by AQA for their English language paper 2 writers' viewpoints and perspectives. A typical question 5, the writing question, is this. Education is not just about which school you go to or what qualifications you gain, it's also about what you learn from your experiences outside of school. Write a speech for your school or college Leavers Day assembly to explain what you think makes a good education. So it's worth 40 marks, it's half the paper, a quarter of your GCSE. The purpose is to explain and argue what you think makes a good education. You should probably reflect a bit on the sentiment of the statement that's given to you to help you work out your opinion. The audience we know are the students and the staff at that Leavers Day assembly in your school or college. And we know that the form of it is as a speech. So it's obvious to say that you should be planning your response, but we need to be working out how the student that we're about to unpick the work of got to plan such a great piece. So hit pause at this point if you want to read this model answer. I'll be unpacking for you exactly how it got the marks. The response continues here. Hit pause to read it in all its glory. So, how did it get full marks? As I go through this, I'm going to be considering the writing features that make it so good and also hit level 4. I've also colour coordinated this so it matches the writing features the exam board are looking for at the very top band. As I read it, you'll understand what devices have been used. Whatever's in green is deliberately crafting the linguistic devices, and they're very useful rhetorical devices. And whatever you see in red is either a really inventive structure or it helps flow really well. Education. What is it? 6 painful hours of mandatory work for 13 mandatory years of wretched school life. All for a few hours of stressful exams which test how much you've been listening and how much you understand. Instantly, this is quite emotive. The fact they're asking us directly, what is it? And then they answer their own question is a thing that recurs across this response. It's a very good way of pushing the emphasis on your reader and engaging them, or in this case, your audience. Education is reading from a textbook and memorising each and every word because who knows what question could come up in that test. Education is listening to a teacher when they tell you, write this down, it may come up in the test, because you don't want to fail. Education is learning the cruel mark scheme off by heart in order for you to know how to answer the question the way the examiner wants it answered and to dodge any sneaky tricks they add in to try and trip you up, to fail you. Instantly, the repetition of education is. And then the stress that's being implanted through each of these scenarios is telling us that a good education is not what this candidate believes they've experienced. So this next section, this standalone line in its own paragraph is very powerful. Education is whatever the government wants it to be. Wow. That's surprisingly inventive because it stands alone and it just accentuates the flaw in the system according to whoever is speaking this speech. However, to us, it can become much more. People will tell you that you must hand in your homework at a certain time because it prepares you for deadlines that you will meet at work. Correct? I'm loving the questions as they come through like this. And the repetition of correct as you see in this paragraph is incredibly crafted because it forces you to think about whether you agree or not. And at the moment, we are thinking, yeah, correct. And they will bang on about how important it is to use high-level words to sound sophisticated in your work. Correct? And they will also tell you you must score highly in your test because there's nothing else left for you to do if you don't. Correct. There's a real ominous quality to this writing and the rhetoric of great powerful argument pieces. It's clear straight away what position they have taken. This person is deeply unhappy by education and they are really throwing out there their opinions. There's no doubt they are angry as we read this, and that's an important thing. We shouldn't be hesitating about which side you are taking when you're arguing or explaining your view. Incorrect. Some people struggle with being organised and actually need help becoming more organised. Some people don't have an enormous advanced dictionary in their minds, maybe due to lack of skill or maybe due to learning difficulties. Some people don't perform at their best under pressure, maybe due to nerves or even anxiety. My point is that not everyone has the same skills and abilities and strengths, so why treat them as if they do? Now, this is the real hook into this argument. This person is throwing shade massively on education, but is definitely trying to force you as the audience into a position where you're learning exactly what you should be thinking. Not everyone learns the same way, eats the same way, moves the same way, or thinks the same way. So don't treat them as if they do. The deliberate crafting of the same way and the repetition of that by changing the different verb that goes before it is definitely heightening their frustration. Everyone is unique and different, and I believe education is a key to highlighting those differences and evolving them to become something even greater. Education should be about encouraging people to explore the world and themselves, to gain experience, to try new things, to find what works best for them, not forcing them to do everything the same, stripping them of everything but their name for non-identification in a test. Wow, they're really letting out their anger in this exam. What's powerful so far is that impending sense of frustration getting released as we read this. You can't help but be drawn into what they're saying. And now for the bit that really bangs. I refuse to be a marionette and let someone else pull my strings. I challenge education to let go and do something different for a change, to let itself evolve like the world around it before it becomes extinct. So if there was ever a threat to education, this is now the promise. Education needs to change according to this candidate. I like the idea of being a marionette. You're a kind of puppet on a string. That metaphor is quite powerful. And finally, a good education should be dispensed to all. Education with an open mind and diverse ways of thinking. No one is the same, so treat them as they deserve to be treated. Don't let us become the victims of education. Let us become proud children of it. The thing that's incredibly pertinent across this response is that they haven't written a huge amount. This would take up about 2 sides, but it's obvious they have sequenced their ideas. We understand the problem really well. They then move on seamlessly to show us exactly how that problem is damaging, and then they offer a solution that education has to evolve and change, and that actually every candidate or student deserves education that empowers them. They're not using particularly overused devices or words, but they are so clear. The discourse markers, the way they break down how they're signalling their response, are very powerful. Whether that's as simple as using questions like correct, correct, and then slamming the brakes on that saying incorrect, or whether it's the repetition throughout of education is, education is, education is. So what are my top tips for argument writing? Please do write less and craft more. You need to make a plan and sequence your ideas. Link your paragraphs using discourse markers. They're the breakdown of the sequence of what you're saying. I mean this, education is, etc. Try and avoid overusing linguistic devices. Try and keep it simple, and it's all about the quality of the devices you're using, not using loads of them just because you feel you should. Try and use the full range of punctuation, and varying your sentence types and even your paragraphs so they stand alone is very powerful. Be ambitious using vocabulary you know the meaning of, that you believe is powerful. And finally, proofread what you've written so you don't look like a mug. Ultimately, if you've got an opinion and you've got something to respond to, you are going to be compelling. So please ensure that you have done everything to craft it so that whatever you're grafting for in that exam becomes your victory. Best of luck. Why not subscribe to Miss Hannah Loves Grammar for all things English, literary and grammatical?